There are additional smoke-ins to the usual smoke-ins we have every year. The usual ones are 420 and April 20th, Cannabis Day on July 1st, the Global Marijuana March the first Saturday in May. But every 5 years, we have the Grasstown anniversary celebrations. And it is the 45th anniversary, so it's going to be one of those gotta celebrate it years. Things that end in 5 and zeros are special to humans. So we're doing it again this year, August 7th at Maple Tree Square. That's like Water and Carroll Street, where all the streets meet, where the Gassy Jack statue is in Vancouver. Very famous. It's actually the very first street ever in Vancouver, back when it was just Grandville.
The name of the town was
The name of the town was Grandville, because it was a Grandville. And it was actually called Gastown after a while because of this character named Gassy Jack. And he started the first saloon, which basically started Vancouver as Vancouver. And so Vancouver is basically one of the only cities that's been founded by a drug dealer. And so in 1971, the Yippies and the Georgia Straight organized a big smoke-in protest to respond to the city's Operation Dustbin, which was an attack on all the pot dealers in a couple of neighborhoods in Vancouver, the cool neighborhoods, Gastown and Kitsilano. They had arrested over 100 people in a week. And so the response was to have a big smoke-in on August 7th, 1971 at 8:30 p.m. A whole bunch of people showed up at Maple Tree Square all at once, and they smoked a bunch of joints, and they had an 8-foot-long pretend joint, and they were singing Power to the People. By 10 o'clock at night, there was 2,000 people there. And the cops lost their shit, went in on horseback, smashing skulls, being totally brutal. They were even beat up reporters. It was on the front cover of the newspaper, every newspaper in Canada the next day. And ever since then, the cops, well, kind of have an aversion to beating people up who attend protests because they don't want the bad flack. 1 or 2 or 3 instances in over 20 years of protesting where the cops have attacked. Most of the time they stay back.
Right.
And maybe the reason was the lessons they learned at Grasstown.
When they redesigned Woodward's,
right,
in the new big building they have down there with the new shopping complex that they made, they actually have a big picture. It's actually a painting. It looks like a photograph.
No, it's a photograph.
Oh, it's a photograph. Oh, it's just restaged.
It's a montage, restaged, reenactment photograph of sometime after the cops charged the crowd. So you never really can tell who's the aggressor in that instance. Did the kids attack the cops, or did the cops attack the kids? That isn't told. What they should have done was have one of the photos or a reenactment of the police actually charging a crowd filled with people, including infants. There was like baby strollers around. People were clutching their kids as the cops advanced. That's the image that really tells the true story, and that's left out of the big $1 million mural.
Although the mural is pretty brutal.
Not as half as brutal as the descriptions of what happened that day. Cops dragged pregnant ladies across broken glass by the hair. Cops beat store owners in their storefronts. Cops rode in to stores on horseback and rode into places where people were trapped and rode in on horseback.
Why would they do that?
They put 50 people in the hospital.
What were they so upset about?
Well, disobedience. All these people had...
The shop owners were disobeying?
Well, look, what happened was at 8:30, a bunch of hippies showed up and broke a couple of laws. They blocked traffic,
right,
and they smoked pot. And the cops had never seen so much flagrant violations of the law ever, and they thought their authority had been completely undermined by these hairy people. And they got upset that they were being, ignored as supposedly the people who kept everyone in line. They had never encountered anything like it before. So
that's craziness.
Yeah, but ever since then, the cops have... Well, there was a kiss and make up party a week later, and 15,000 people attended that. Smoked all kinds of weed, drank booze, no problems between them and the police. We have to remember the specifics of the Grasstown riots, so we don't lose the valuable lessons that it has for us. And one of those things was, if you read the actual demands of the protesters, They talk about how the drug war is a class war and it's unevenly applied. It's extra applied on poor people, and the rich people don't have to worry about getting busted for a joint. And they protest for legalized marijuana dealing, specifically, not just possession, but dealing, and an end to the persecution of pot dealers. So it's a dealers' protest, because it was Operation Dustbin was not an attack on users; it was an attack on pot dealers. So these things get lost in the reporting of the Grasstown riot in the major media, in the mass media, and even in some of the academic media. So we're there to kind of remind people what it's really about. It's about preventing a war on natives, preventing a war on the poor, preventing a war on smokers and growers and dealers, and allowing everyone to have an inclusive model. It was really a protest for an inclusive legalization model, but back the year I was born, 45 years ago, 1971. So people have been fighting for an inclusive model as long as I've been alive. It's about time, before I get too old to enjoy it, to win that goal.
We should embrace this wonderful medicine for a tool in our tool chest, rather than see drugs as like a list of good drugs and a list of bad drugs. And the good drugs will never harm you, the bad drugs will always harm you. It doesn't work like that, folks. And the kids back in 1971, they knew it. They had an intuitive feeling that smoking pot and fighting for the right to smoke pot and fighting for the right to deal it and grow it are all super important things to fight for. They're very bad managers of human civilization. They poison the planet and they brutalize the harmless and they lock like thousands of people away. There is nearly 4,000 people in jail in Canada right now for simple possession of cannabis. There's about 15,000 people in jail for all cannabis offenses put together. And none of them should be in jail. Jail is a horrible place. Jail is a gladiator school and kind of a rape college. And we don't need flower criminals to go into gladiator school. That just makes no sense. But it does make sense if you understand why, the real reason why pot is illegal. It has nothing to do with looking after people's health. The only two reasons for pot being illegal are it maintains white supremacy and it allows corporations to monopolize on the synthetic by outlawing the natural. Those are bold statements. Allow me to elaborate. First of all, the drug war has always been about a war against the dark-skinned people of the world. So tobacco and alcohol and drugs that you can get in this country by growing them in this country, I've always, for a while they dabbled with alcohol prohibition, but the amounts of violence went up, the poisonings from bad gin went up, and the amount of people in jail that shouldn't have been in jail went up too. So we abandoned alcohol prohibition. But poppies, coca, cannabis, they all grew in dark-skinned people's countries, and that was why we wanted those drugs illegal, so we could push around the Mexicans and the blacks and the Chinese people. In fact, the first anti-drug law in Canada was the Anti-Opium Act of 1908. And that was a white monopoly on painkillers, because a white pharmacist could sell opium in their botanical drug stores, but the Chinese and Japanese people were not allowed to sell opium in their dens. And you weren't allowed to be a pharmacist if you were Asian until 1947 in Canada. So it was a white monopoly on opiates. And we pretend that the drug war is all about health, but it's not. It's a racist thing. The other thing was, hemp is actually the world's best fuel crop. We could replace gasoline with hemp ethanol. Hemp ethanol is 5 times cheaper than gasoline at the tank. On average, a $500 conversion kit could turn any gasoline-powered car into a hemp ethanol-powered car. There'd be no more oil wars. Hemp grows in sand. It could grow in every country on Earth. There'd be no more oil spills, because a hemp ethanol spill would just evaporate. We wouldn't have a Gulf filled with oil or oil pipeline spills all over the place. And hemp acts as a carbon sink, which could restabilize the planet. We wouldn't suffer from climate destabilization anymore. And all this could happen if we just abandon oil as a fuel and move over to hemp ethanol and other renewables. That is the key to understanding the drug war. The companies that really made pot illegal weren't drug companies, they were oil companies. And that is what they fear most, is if we allow the kids to smoke it and the poor people to grow it, then some people will use it for fuel and the oil companies will stop ruling the world. But I say that's a good thing, because they've done such a bad job over the last 100 years of ruling the world. They should be fired from the job and replaced with millions of farmers all over the world growing hemp for fuel and hemp for food and hemp for medicine and clothing and paper and all the 25,000 other things you can grow and use hemp for. You can make plastics out of it, you can make concrete out of it. Everything that isn't glass or metal could be replaced with hemp. We could have a whole society built on hemp, as long as we abandon our need to brutalize and control harmless people. I think we can live without that.
And my first impression was off-duty detective with a riot shield offering to split my head wide open if I didn't leave immediately.
Oh, you just got there at like 10 o'clock or shortly after?
I was there about 9 o'clock. I was there to pick my girlfriend. She was getting off work. It was a boutique she was working at.
Well, my understanding, the cops attacked at around 10.
They were riding their horses down alleys.
Oh.
They were swinging riot clubs.
Yeah.
They were trying to hurt people. They were out of control. It was another repeat performance of Cannabis Day 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Out of control police, too much testosterone, probably far too many steroids.
Yeah. Well, at least Gastown Riot was the worst that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Put 53 people in the hospital.
53.
Yeah, something like that. It was like dozens anyway.
Go check out the Vancouver Sun archives.
Yeah?
They used to call them stacks when I went to the university, but now it would be...
Now it's online.
Now it's all online.
They're riding the horses right into buildings.
Yeah. That building, to be specific, is they had people trapped in that Chill Winston little thing there, that alcove going into the building, and they rode right up onto the steps of that and were swinging their clubs.
The Gassy Jack statue was on the other side of the street.
It was over there.
And
where Chill Winston is.
They trapped a bunch of people in the square.
Yeah. Not 100% of the time, but most of the time, it's not in the police's interest to look bad in the camera, in front of the cameras. So, and that's how the farmers markets came to be. Is that, well, if cameras can protect us from being beaten for smoking pot, maybe cameras can help keep us from being beaten for selling pot. And now, twice a year, at least twice a year, and the Global Marijuana March too. So 3 times a year, at least in Vancouver, there's a little pot farmers market that springs up, and we fight for dealers' rights as well. And we're carrying on the tradition here in Vancouver of fighting for the rights of poor people and young people and brown-skinned people to all enjoy cannabis, growing it, selling it, dealing it, and smoking it, and everything you can do with it. So, with that, I leave you with these thoughts. Google Grasstown and Gastown Riot and see what's on the internet. There's lots of information out there. Don't believe the hype about the young people starting the problems. That was a whitewash in the inquiry, and that was the big Woodward's memorial, but it doesn't indicate who started the violence, and it was the police. So those photos that prove that it was the police that started the violence are up online. Inform yourself more about this and about Rodney Kingophobia and hug power and resistance to oppression and tyranny, and become the activist you wish to see in your neighborhood. You know, it takes many protests and many smoke-ins in order to make this thing universal for everybody, not just in Vancouver and Toronto, but everyone across Canada and everyone across the whole world deserves the freedom to decide what goes in your bodies, to any harmless activity, really. We all deserve to be free, and the only way to get that freedom is to stand up for it, insist on it, and act as if you were free, and then defend it. So puff tough and keep your heads held high.